The Retirement Cafe podcast. Pete Matthew fires the questions. Introducing the Retirement Cafe Handbook. Get ready for a format twist this week as I switch roles from host to guest. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast with me, your host, Justin King. If you're thinking about your retirement or already retired, you're in the right place. My aim is to help you plan for and live a successful and meaningful retirement. Retirement is far more than just a financial event. It's a significant life event, a major transition, which will bring with it new challenges and opportunities. So each episode contains tips, information, and inspiration to help you feel more informed and confident about your retirement. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce none other than the incredible Pete Matthew, a dear friend and a fellow chartered financial planner who is taking the reins as my guest host. Now, if the world of your personal finance sets your heart racing, then Pete Matthew needs no further introduction. He's the mastermind behind the groundbreaking Meaningful Money podcast, a powerhouse with over 500 episodes under its belt. What's more, his YouTube channel, also named Meaningful Money, boasts an astounding 86,000 subscribers. So you will likely recognize Pete's face or voice from somewhere. You may have heard me mention over the past couple of weeks that I've written a new book. It's called The Retirement Cafe Handbook, 9 Accelerators for a Successful Retirement. And it officially launches today. Race over to Amazon and order your copy as soon as you can. Now, as the tables turn in this episode, Pete takes the lead and grills me about the journey that led to the creation of this book. We dive into the creative process, how this podcast, and of course, the incredible guests who were the inspiration. And I share how I hope this handbook will transform countless lives by paving the way to a truly meaningful retirement. Get ready also to discover the bedrock of my framework, the 3 pivotal levers of purpose, self-care, and planning. So, without further ado, I'll stop the chat and allow you to enjoy my conversation with Pete Matthew.
Well, this is fun and a real honour to be asked by my buddy Justin to be a guest interviewer for the Retirement Cafe podcast. Thank you for having me, Justin.
Oh, welcome back, Pete. Welcome back. It's always wonderful to chat to you.
Well, you very kindly sent me an advance copy of the book. I get sent quite a lot of books and I read a load of books. And we're going to talk about it today. But right at the top, let me just say you've done an outstanding job of this. So I'm really looking forward to getting into it and, you know, the reasons behind it, the triggers and the whole structure of it without giving too much away, of course, so that lots of people buy it because they should. But, you know, you're a busy man, right? 30-odd year veteran financial planner, 180-odd episodes of this very podcast. You've got a lot going on, man. So why, you know, do you have too much spare time or whatever? Why write a book on top of all that?
No, I don't have too much spare time, believe me. But you know, again, this the Retirement Cafe podcast was born out of trying to help just regular people in the street kind of make better decisions about their retirement. And these came off the back of the podcast came off the back of live events, which we used to put on in the community for free. Then realised that was costing us quite a lot, so then went down the podcast route, and it gave me obviously access to so many experts in their different fields, who were so generous at giving their time to come and chat to me, and then it was like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. 100 odd, God knows, 180 odd episodes, 4.5 years of the podcast, coming up to 5 years. God, if you were starting out now, the idea that you're going to plow through all of those episodes and try and work out what do I need to listen to, really tough. Yeah. So I thought, well, could I distill this into a handbook? that actually was available to anyone, and then people maybe from the handbook go, you know what, actually I will go and listen to that story from that guest because that that bit really interests me, or that's something that I've got a challenge about. So maybe it's a handbook for the podcast. I don't know, but I think it stands up on its own right as well.
Definitely does, and I'm sure people will do that. They'll bounce off the book to the podcast to go a little bit deeper, because you've done. You've obviously drawn off the expertise of many of your guests and pulled some stories and anecdotes and some key points, obviously, that they've shared, but also bringing to bear your experience as well in dealing with hundreds, if not thousands, of clients over your career. But before we get sort of dig into the book itself, having written a book and known the sort of pain that goes into it, I was quite interested to know how you found the writing and editing process.
Flipping difficult, really.
Nicely edited.
That's the reality of it. I'd love to say it was a walk in the park, but I'm very, again, as per before, so I'm very forecast. Not only did we have this well of knowledge to draw on about content, actually that's one of the classic things that people get stuck with about when they're going to write a book, but then bringing all that content together and getting it into a kind of sensible order. And I'm very visual, so I kind of draw stuff out and I kind of have a picture of it. I'm very, very fortunate to have a great team here at MFP. Kathy, my wife, is unbelievably structured.
Nice.
And can really kind of somehow listen to me and take out and distill the essence of what I'm trying to get at, and then go, okay, so we need this person to do that and that. And yet again, we've had good editors and we've had good artists and we've had good people to proofread it and to give us feedback. So feedback's key.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, the process, it's not just like write it and then get it out, is it? It's a write and then a rewrite and then an edit and then a tweak. And how shall we illustrate that and all those sorts of things? Hey, I've been there, man. But it's great when it's done, and you should be massively proud of what you've achieved. But in the book, you offer some elements, shall we say, that sort of define a fulfilled, successful retirement. Firstly, what are those sort of key elements, and how did you sort of distill it down to those? I often think it's one of the things that we do as financial planners is distilling a whole wealth of information into just some key points that people can really latch onto. I'm just wondering how you did that in this case.
Yeah, so this key concept of what are we all after? A fulfilling retirement. I mean, we're after fulfilling lives.
Yeah.
I mean, but this is the stage we're talking about, fulfilling retirement. And then I've listened to so many people talk about their retirement, and obviously we're working with clients and then all these different experts. And then it was like, okay, so what are the key things? And so I kind of got, as I say, again, distilled down to vitality, choice, and joy. And vitality, of course, we all talk about. Everyone is focused, aren't they? Well, especially in our world, they're focused on the money. The money is important. The money for retirement is probably the biggest question that we, as financial planners get asked. They come into, I start the book off, people come into us and they always talk about, can you help me with my pension? Can you help me with my tax? Can you help me with my investment? Yep. Those are the three things. And I talk about, that really is the tip of the iceberg. That's not really the substance of your retirement. If the money is just going to be just the only defining thing in your retirement, then we've probably missed something.
Yeah.
And actually, again, we can swap the other aspects and go, say, if I go, Pete, money or health? Money or health? Which
Choose,
and I know which way you're going to choose. You're going to go with health, aren't you? So vitality, maintaining your vitality, or maybe even improving your vitality as you go through your retirement years, is significant. And then, of course, just assuming that you've got vitality, you want a joyful time. And often joyful times do come through having the ability to choose. How do you want your retirement picture to look like? And so having choice in your world, having vitality, having joy to be alive and to enjoy this part of your life. I just think those are the key things. If we can get all those embedded, we're going to have a fulfilled retirement.
Absolutely right. And it's we'll sort of use this fairly throwaway line that wealth gives you choice, but that's just one facet of this, as you rightly say. because money won't necessarily bring you health, will it? It might help you get some treatment, but there's an awful lot more to it than that. So vitality, choice, and joy, those are essentially almost like the goals, if you like. It's what we would like our fulfilling retirement to look like. But to achieve those, you then talk about what you call levers. Most of us understand the idea of a lever and a fulcrum, things that we can control, but which have disproportionately big impact. Now, that's the whole point of a lever, isn't it? So you get basically the main structure of the book is around these three levers, and then we'll dig a little bit deeper in a minute. But we better say what they are first. So do you want to just give us what the three levers are?
So the first key lever is purpose. So what is our purpose during this period of life? I'd say actually we always want purpose in our lives, but we particularly looking at this retirement opportunity, and do look at it as an opportunity for a different life, but make it purposeful, and to connect a phrase with you, of course, but make it meaningful. So if it's purposeful, and then we can also have we spend a lot of time in self-care. Maintaining our lives. If we can have purpose and we can have self-care, we're going to get that vitality aspect in our retirement. And then another lever will be planning. So planning the next 30 years, planning, what does it want to look like? When is it we're going to retire? When do we want to retire? What is it all, getting some, obviously that's the kind of world we help people with, but planning for a 30-odd year time frame it's a significant challenge, and there's lots of stuff that's going to happen over that period of time. But if we can get the self-care and the planning right, then we can have a joyful time. And then if we can get the planning and the purpose right, we can have those choices that you can choose how we're going to have, we're going to live our retirements. So it's purpose, self-care, and planning are those three key levers.
Yeah, it's great. One of the things I love about this book is how holistic it is. So easy for somebody like you or me to focus on the money. There's plenty of books written about living a healthy retirement, but we're really trying to hit all these three things. You do a great job. So the first lever then, purpose. It's like a massive subject, but I wonder what you mean by that. Maybe some examples that you've come across, maybe from the book or from client work.
So you'll know I'm a big fan of the kind of life planning approach to financial planning.
Yeah.
And this is really about giving people the space to have quite a deep conversation of what will truly be meaningful to them. And once you get meaning, once people are kind of on a path to doing something possibly slightly bigger than themselves, it's often a time for people to give back, or to learn new skills, or to just take on something that they never had time to do before, to reconnect relationships, to work with charities, to one of my clients is involved in. He's been on the podcast actually. He's involved in Myra's Wells, and they build wells in Africa. And it's a really small little charity. There's 4 or 5 of them who work in their back bedrooms, kind of raising a bit of money, and all the money that raised goes to building wells. And they go out to Africa and they hire the plant to dig the wells, and they change villagers' lives. And it's significantly meaningful. There's real purpose with his retirement. Other people do, they start businesses, or they learn languages, or they take up further education with the Open University. There's so much. It doesn't. I'd never want to judge what's meaningful to somebody, or to But actually, if it's just golf clubs and cruises, I'm not convinced. The conversations I have with people who just do that is quite as purposeful, and they're quite as fulfilled. Which is, again, as I say, what I'm really after trying to create in people's lives is this really fulfilled part of their life, and having purpose, whatever it may be, and it's often just slightly bigger than you.
And often that's part of the challenge of the transition into retirement, isn't it? Because very often our purpose has been pretty well set, and very often might be, if not our purpose, certainly a very large part of our lives has been defined for us by the job that we do. Obviously, if we're employed by somebody else, and that job is literally defined for us. But even if we run our own business, that is our kind of purpose, identity, maybe. Certainly, I come across this all the time. This transition away from that, potentially into something else, can leave people bereft unless they fill it with something. That resonate with you?
Yeah, and of course, suddenly becoming the ex-GP or the
Retired headmistress.
Retired headmistress, absolutely. All of a sudden that identity you've held for a long time has gone. And that's cool as well, because, that's, maybe the right time for you to take a break and just go and do something else and just really spend some time for yourself doing the things that are meaningful for you. But yes, it is a significant shift, and people can get a little lost and disconnected a bit from the commercial world. I'm not saying the commercial world is education or anything, but it's the real world. It's the real world of, if you're in education, of students and students' problems,
Yeah, exactly.
You are really connected to the environment. Whereas if you are, I have had it heard before when I've talked to younger people say, my parents, the highlight of their day is that, if they've got an appointment at the dentist, and that's not what it's. Surely that's not what it's about. It's about actually still making sure that this period of time, with so much, hopefully, vitality and energy and choice, and you've created this environment that now allows you to really, really live into your dreams of whatever they may be. And that's what I'm always hoping to do, is have a conversation with people to really uncover what those dreams may have been. They may have been shelved a little bit sometimes through the commitments of family and business and all the other stuff that we kind of get into. And the little thing that you may have dreamt of when you were a 9-year-old boy staring out of the window, bored in geology class or something, I don't know, and going, I wonder if, and maybe we can rekindle some of those kind of inner passions.
Yeah, absolutely. With the space, time, and hopefully wealth and vitality to do it. The world is your oyster, isn't it? Then it's about sort of having some plans for that, and in our case, creating the space for people to sometimes articulate those things. But so that's lever number one, purpose. So important. It kind of underpins everything. But then number two is self-care. And this is, I appreciated this section of the book, I think, most, as somebody who's often been challenged in that area, looking after myself sort of physically, health wise and stuff. So do you want to just explain what you mean by that and then dig into that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. We kind of all know that looking after yourself, eating well is good for you, and some exercise, and but there's probably no greater time when it has such significant impact if you don't. We probably all know when you're kind of in your teenage years, you may look back and go, yeah, do you remember we used to be at a party till 3 and then play football the next morning? And for someone who at the age of 53, is still playing grass hockey. It's not played on grass any longer. It's played on the AstroTurf. But I know that on a Saturday when I'm playing, that I don't go out on a Friday night. It's just not going to happen any longer. I've got to give myself self-care. And there's a lot to it. There's an awful lot of science available now into the science of aging. And, again, I'm very present of being a male of my age, that my muscles are wasting and I've got to stay strong. And if I can stay strong, then maybe I can still be strong for grandchildren if they come about. And, and then there's the kind of dementia, and there's a whole heap of stuff happening. And if you can maybe learn about the subject, become motivated about the subject, you can be stronger, fitter for longer. Surely has got to be a desire for us all.
Yeah. You would think so, wouldn't you? And you devote a chapter to dementia, which I'm sure you'd agree is sort of taken over from cancer as the biggest fear for most people. That's usually the first thing they talk about. What if I, and become incapable to manage my own affairs? They might not. That's the sort of terms I would put it in. But they would normally put it in much more colloquial, perhaps less PC terms than that. But it's a big fear for a lot of people. But there's stuff we can do about that now.
Yeah, we can, and obviously I cover it. And there's tons of stuff we can do. The other aspect of things get people when they haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of the life's unlucky dice which are thrown at us.
Yeah.
But again, flipping back to the purposeful part of the retirement is, let's say that, Pete, you got diagnosed in just 36 months' time with dementia, right? And we've got a client who's in his 50s, and I know you haven't. I don't think you've reached your 50s
Not yet. Not quite.
But we've got a client in his 50s, early 50s, who's got dementia. And again, I just kind of think to myself, well, make sure that you are living your truest, fullest life now, so that if that horrible, horrible diagnosis happened, and and a certain part of your life was removed, i.e., you couldn't achieve everything that you wanted to achieve in certain areas, but you can still achieve an awful lot with dementia. One of the experts I spoke to was telling me all about, how long you can, with the right drugs and the right treatment and the right environment, etc., you can live with dementia for many, many years now. It is no longer the kind of classic death sentence that people have give a stigmatized approach to. But it's, again, making sure that we live each and every day as fullest as we can. We equip ourselves so that the diagnosis of dementia is less likely to happen because of all the medical science we've got about a good, healthy diet and sleeping well and exercising, etc., and using your brain, looking to make sure that you can give yourself the greatest opportunity to not suffer. But then also think, well, you know what? If I do get that dice thrown at me and that is the diagnosis that I receive, make sure you've lived the fullest life possibly up until that point, so that there is possibly less opportunity for regret.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah. Now you're talking. That is to be avoided at all costs, isn't it? Regret. It's been one of the most awful things. So purpose, self-care, first two of our three levers. And the third is planning, which, is a word that you and I won't use all the time. It's our sort of raison d'etre, if you like. But financial planning is one thing, and you do obviously deal with that. But we're not just talking about the finances. We're talking about planning more widely, aren't we?
Yeah. So the financial planning, of course, is key because it gives people, hopefully, if they can get a financial plan and they've got a bit of a clue what's going on, some confidence. And confidence to step forward into the world, to be able to have the choice to do the things that you want to do is significant, as we know. But again, if you have a 30-year retirement, I mean, again, that's a concept that people kind of don't really. I'm entering retirement. Yeah, but how long is that going to be for? Well, I don't know.
Exactly.
It could be a flipping long time. Yeah. Let's look at the stats. In fact, you can pop onto the Office of National Statistics and you can stick in your date of birth. It'll tell you when your life expectancy average is. Yeah. Give you a bit of a clue, and you may be greater than average, you may be not, and you can make a choice, a call on that. But get an idea. Think, okay, so if I'm planning for it, but then also break it down. Without a doubt, on the ski slope of life, if you've ever been a skier, you start out on a green slope. It's the gentlest slopes at the bottom of the mountain, and that's where you learn. And then you progress maybe to a blue slope, which is a little bit steeper and a bit more fun, a nice wide open piece. And then you will move to a reds and then up to a blacks, and then you kind of get to the nutters who just jump off the side of mountains and do all this kind of off-pisting. And I kind of feel that your retirement years may be a little bit like that, in your earlier years, maybe, let's say you're in your 60s and you've got full vitality and you haven't got any ailments or injuries, and you're ready to go and life is great. Maybe you are. It's just like gentle blue, wide open blue slopes and easy going. But eventually you're going to hit the red, and eventually you're also going to hit the black, and you will fall off at some point. Sure. But maybe plan for that and say, okay, for these first 10 years, probably you've got to have full vitality. I will be able to do this trip. I will be able to take on this knowledge. I will be able to make a difference in building wells in Africa, whatever it may be. But there's a period of time in your life where you've got that energy and purpose and joy, hopefully, to do those types of things. But also realize that there's going to be some brilliant things to do in your 70s and 80s and 90s, which will still fulfill you, just maybe different. And having a plan around that is also very important. And then, of course, planning for that, the other scary thing that we're always having a conversation about is, well, what happens when we need care, and who's going to look after us, and how is that going to work with the rest of the family? If you have family, how is that going to be, balanced out? Have those conversations. If you haven't, have conversations with people who can provide and help and get a plan for it. It doesn't have to be, again, the worst part of your life just because you've ended up in care. I mean, there are some good care homes, or you can get cared for at home if you can afford to do it. Again, financial planning.
Reason to plan, isn't it? When you looking quite some distance out, 60, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even potentially sort of 20, 30 years out, I find it's quite hard to get people to talk about what they might see themselves doing at that point. So are we talking sort of generalizations? People can see in the short term, right? They can have an idea of what they might want to do next year or the year after next or something. But asking what they're thinking they might be up to in their 80s, how do you have those kind of conversations?
Well, I think the first thing that happens is that, again, we have this kind of foible of recency bias. So we think we're going to be like our parents.
Yeah, true.
And of course, we're actually not.
Totally different.
The life expectancy has changed, life has changed, society has changed, the way we operate with the world has changed. So you're not going to be like your parents. So don't kind of picture yourself of, it's a bit like saying, I don't know, interest rates are 0.5%, they're going to stay that forever. Inflation's 14%, it's going to stay there forever. The reality is life continually changes, doesn't it? And we don't know what the future's going to be like. I think it's really crucial to make sure that you've done everything that you want to do whilst you can. And then, yes, it is more generalizations. It's more kind of, okay, so just imagine I've used that app occasionally, which is a bit of fun. It's called a face app. I think, where you take a picture and age somebody, And I usually do it to myself first of all, and it makes me even grayer and gives me a grey beard, But so that's a bit of fun. This is what you're going to look like at 85. But I think a lot of coming back to the choice that the planning gives you is that what we want to do is make sure that by the time someone hits 85, they've still got lots of choices financially, that they've got lots of choices, so that they can go, okay, so now we want to live here, we'll downsize, we'll shift. Often with planning, I've helped people move home earlier.
Yes.
They go for the downsize earlier than they expected to, because I kind of go, look, if you're going to move at some point, why don't you do it now whilst you can then form part of the new community? Yes. Therefore, you're going to create a social network, and you're going to create, part of a new area, rather than maybe the bigger property where you've lived and you don't know the neighbours so well, that type of thing.
That's great advice. It's I've had similar conversations myself. I can't imagine anything worse than moving house in my late 80s. Can you? It's enough of a pain in your 40s.
Yeah, and flipping back to the dementia thing, we do definitely know that people who are suffering from dementia, who can stay in their own home in a very, very familiar environment, stave off the real severe effects for much, much longer. So again, one of the reasons to maybe move closer to family, into a different environment earlier rather than later, was because if you did get that dementia diagnosis, that you can be starting off in a very familiar, safe environment.
Yeah. Sound advice. So purpose, self-care and planning, those are the three levers, the sort of three things that make up the structure of the book. But you break it down further. Now, each of those has sort of 3 accelerators, 9 in total, with a chapter dedicated to each. And obviously we don't have time. Don't want the listeners to sort of inwardly groan and say, man, there's another 9 questions coming up on each of these. You're going to need to buy the book, folks. You'll be glad you did. But clearly this has come as a distillation, as you said earlier on, of not only all the conversations you've had, but the work you've done as a registered life planner as well. How did the framework sort of come together, and how did the sort of elements of it work together and support each other so that the outcome is this fulfilling retirement?
I think it was just literally I sitting down and going, okay, there must be some key elements to this jigsaw puzzle. There must be some kind of key things that people can draw upon and go, okay, have I got this aspect of my life worked out? Have I got this bit worked out? Have I thought about that? And the book doesn't get to the point where I think that you can have everything nailed, because of course we're talking about the future.
It's going to be wrong.
The future is unknown. But again, it doesn't mean you don't have a view, right? Okay, so how did the framework come together? It really was literally Post-it notes, and what are the key elements people keep telling me about? What are the key things that they are worried about? What are the key things that I'm taking a view on, going, do you know what they look as a couple, they look like they're having a most amazing retirement. What are the key things that have what I'm looking at and going, wow, yeah, you seem to have it really, really nailed. So that was it, really. Yeah, piecing them all together and going, okay, so what are the emotional factors that are driving this? Hopefully, this end result of fulfilling retirement.
I could have put money on the fact that there would have been Post-it notes involved, because I think that's how I would have done it as well. And I often think it's one of the privileges of what we do is that we obviously get to walk through this kind of vicariously with our clients, don't we? And we can sort of pick the bits. It's like, I'm not sure I would have done that actually, and maybe we can sort of piece together a patchwork of the perfect retirement for ourselves. But in the book, obviously, you're helping people to do that. It's a deeply practical book, actually. There's loads of resources in there that as well as the stories and the theory that you put out. It's very, very practical. I wondered though if you had a favourite story from the book.
A couple have made a big impression on me. Esther Ranson made a big impression on me.
Legend. National treasure.
Silverline.
Yeah. I didn't know about that. When I read about that, I thought, how typical of Esther Ranson not to, rest on the laurels of the incredible success of Childline.
Yeah, yeah. And so at admittance at 71, she was lonely.
Yeah.
And you kind of just go, really? how does that happen? And then, of course, there's again that realization that we have no idea of people's lives, and what's going on, and what people are fearful of, and what they are looking forward to, and so Esther made a big impression. It was great to go and meet her and talk to her and find out all about the great work she did with Silverline, and Silverline continues to do, which is in essence a charity that is there for people to talk to, aimed at elderly people who are possibly quite lonely, and then to encourage them. And Esther talked about one of the people on the end of the line at Silverline, who was talking to a guy who used to be a dancer, and his wife had died and he didn't dance any longer. And, got encouraged to go, the lady was saying, well, I dance, well, who'd you go with? Well, I go on my own, and they encouraged this gentleman to go back to dancing, and he went back to salsa. And then over the months and time, the conversation he got more and more positive. And you just go, that's a significant change. Who is it you can talk to? Who is it you can knock on the door of? Who, let's do that ourselves in our own community. And the other story that I think, again, is absolutely key. Kevin Webber, who got prostate cancer in his 40s. And, okay, he wasn't in throes of retirement, but he was given a terminal diagnosis. And he got off the couch and started running. And again, it's this aspect of taking control of his health. He'd been a bit of a run in the past, but he'd kind of, he'd become a bit lax and not doing so much, etc., and watching the box sets. And he just took control of his health, and he's still running. I mean, I think it must be 10 years, I think,
Amazing.
since his diagnosis. So he's okay. And again, I think that aspect of, this self-care we can impact our lives. I mean, he impacted his lives even with a terminal diagnosis, for God's sake. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen to everybody, but wow, that's huge. So if you are in relatively reasonably good health, take the opportunity to just improve on it, because I think you'll just thank yourself, won't you, in your future years, in your 80s and 90s, you will absolutely thank yourself.
Absolutely.
So Muir Gray, who also very kindly did I'm not sure what you call it, but a little blurb on the front cover of the book. He wrote a couple of books called Sod 70, and I think he wanted to call it something rude 80, but anyway, it was called Sod 80 again, I think. And he was asked on the bus once, if someone wanted to sit in his 80s, said, "You would like to sit down, sir?" And he said, "No, I'm in training." "Well, what are you in training for?" He said, "My later life."
Yeah, genius. Absolutely right, though. He never stopped.
And so they're just that simple action of, I'm going to stand up, not sit down. Taking control.
So this is going to be episode 180 something of the Retirement Cafe podcast, which is itself an incredible achievement. Most people know the stats that most don't make it past sort of episode 7 or 8, something like that. So to get to 180 odd is sterling work, my friend. You've interviewed a lot of people over that time. Any real standout ones? Imagine it's hard to choose, but I'm going to pin you down.
Oh gosh. God, it. I don't think I could nail my colours to the mast at all. I'm afraid there's just been so many people who've given me such insight and such kindness and generosity with their time. I mean, it's been really, really significant, and they've all proofread the book as well.
Oh, wow.
You sort of not proof their part of their book. Check their comments are correct, because they're all quoted with all their relevance. So again, a lot of time and effort has gone into making sure that's happened. Thanks again to Kathy for that, but thanks again to all the guests and all the contributors to the book, because. We would, as always, we stand on the shoulders of giants. It's only the success of the podcast and the book, hopefully, is only because of all the kindness and generosity of all the contributors.
Yeah, absolutely. In your sort of quiet moments, what's your dreams and goals for the book? What do you want it to achieve, and what's the impact you'd like it to have?
I'd love people to kind of renew. I can't remember. One of the guests has told me, it may have been Samir Gray again, but who's told me that he wants to view retirement as a renaissance.
Nice.
And this is, there are connotations around the word retirement, which are a bit negative. And actually, it could be the most fantastic time of your life. It may be the time that you've got the resources together. It just may be the time you've got time, which I think is the most valuable thing that we've all got. Forget money, time or money again, £1 million, but you're dying tomorrow. What are you going to swap for? Same thing. So just embrace this opportunity to go, do you know what? I'm actually going to get to the point of my dying day. If ONS say I'm going to die at 85, I'm going to get to 85 and I'm going to look back at those 20 years that I was retired and going, wow. Weren't they flipping brilliant?
Absolutely right. That's about as good as it gets, isn't it? That to be able to look back and think, yes, I did that and did it really, really well. Finished strong, which I think all of us can identify with that and can aspire to that. Well, look, man, I think you've done an outstanding job with this book. I really don't say that lightly. I do read a lot of books and I get sent a lot of books to read. I think you've done an outstanding job with this. I think it's going to help a lot of people, and we need to encourage as many people as possible to buy it, but also maybe to buy it for their loved ones, those that they know who are entering this stage or starting to think about it, because the sooner we can think about this stuff, the better. So thank you for letting me interview you about it, and thank you for sending me a copy in advance. But I think we need to let people know where they can pick it up and where they can find out more.
Yeah, well, obviously available on Amazon. It is a self-published book that we put together, so it hasn't been picked up by all the booksellers, but you never know if anyone's out there wants to put it in their bookstores. But yeah, it's available on Kindle. It's available as a hard copy, and it will be available as a paperback, I think, a little bit later. And it comes out on September the 12th.
September the 12th. Mark your calendars now. I should say, actually, dear listeners, before we hit record here, I asked Justin. I know I said to him, I was surprised that this was self-published. Such is the quality of the work. Again, I see a lot of self-published books, and most of them you can tell a mile off. Whereas this, the effort that's been put in, you can really see. Well, all the very best with it, my friend. You deserve all the success that you're getting, and thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks, Pete. Really appreciate it.
I cannot thank Pete enough for not only reviewing my book, but for putting me in the hot seat and interviewing me today. To get your copy of the Retirement Cafe Handbook, either head straight to Amazon or you can check out the show notes wherever you get your podcasts for a link. You'll also find ways to connect with and follow Pete Matthew and his Meaningful Money franchise if you're not already a subscriber. If you read the book, which I really hope you do, please do write a review on Amazon, as it helps more people like you find the book and plan for their successful retirement. So until next time, I'm Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.